So, have you ever wondered what it really takes to become a U.S. citizen? It's a journey filled with forms, tests, and a pretty serious oath. Today, we are going to break down that entire process. It's called naturalization, and we're going to do it step by step. Okay, let's just dive right in. The whole thing can really be broken down into 5 main stages. You've got the application, then a biometrics appointment to verify who you are, then the big one, the interview and exam. After that, get a decision, and it all ends with taking the oath of allegiance. Think of this as our roadmap for today. And to make sure we get the full picture, we're going to tackle this in 4 parts. First, we'll cover what naturalization even means. Then, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the application itself. After that, we'll look at the interview and the tests. And finally, we'll walk through the last steps to officially becoming a U.S. citizen. So, first things first, before we get lost in all the paperwork and the test questions, it's super important to understand the big idea behind this whole process. The official term for all this is naturalization, and according to U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, you'll hear them called USCIS, it's simply the process for someone born outside the U.S. to become a citizen. It's a legal pathway, not something that's just handed out. But it is so much more than just a legal thing. It's a huge commitment. And this one line from the Oath of Allegiance, it just perfectly captures how serious it is. Becoming a citizen means you are actively promising to protect the country's core values. All right, so keeping that big commitment in mind, let's get practical. It's time to tackle the first real hurdle, the paperwork gauntlet. This is where an applicant's entire history gets put down on paper. Every single person's journey begins right here with this one document. It's called the Form N-400, and it's the massive application that kicks the whole thing off. It's where you lay out your background and prove you're eligible. So you've filled out that giant N-400 form. Now what? The big question is, how long is this all going to take? Well, based on government data, the average time from filing that application to the final oath ceremony is about 5.5 months. But of course, that's just an average. It can totally vary depending on where you are and your specific case. Now, here's one of the most important and, frankly, kind of subjective requirements. It's this idea of good moral character. So what on earth does that mean? Well, USCIS basically says it means your character has to meet the standards of an average person in your community. It's a pretty broad concept that looks at everything you've done. And let's be clear, this isn't about minor traffic tickets. Some actions are considered so serious that they create a permanent bar to citizenship. We're talking about the most severe offenses here, like murder or something called an aggravated felony, which is a legal term that covers a whole range of very serious crimes. Okay, so once all the paperwork is in and the background checks are clear, the applicant hits the next major milestone. This is where they have to prove they have the knowledge to be an informed citizen. It's test time. This part is actually split into 2. On one side, you have the English test. They check your speaking skills during the interview, and you have to read and write one simple sentence correctly. Then on the other side, you have the civics test. This one's an oral exam, and you have to get at least 6 out of 10 questions right about U.S. history and government. So what do these civics questions actually look like? Well, here are a few examples. They cover the real fundamentals, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, how the government is set up. The whole point is just to make sure new citizens have a basic grasp of how the country actually works. All right, you've passed the test, you've aced the interview. Now we're at the home stretch. Let's look at the final steps, from getting the official decision all the way to the ceremony itself. So, after the interview, you're going to get one of 3 decisions from USCIS. Approved is obviously the one you want. That means you're headed to the oath ceremony. Continued means they need more info from you, or maybe you have to retake part of the test. And then there's denied, which means the application was rejected. But, getting denied isn't necessarily the end of the line. An applicant has a 30-day window to file another form, the N-336, to request a hearing. Basically, you get to appeal the decision to a different USCIS officer. What's really fascinating, though, is how few people actually go through with that appeal. Look at this data. Over 92,000 applications were denied, but less than 11,000 people filed an appeal. Now, there's no one reason why, but you can imagine it's a mix of things. Maybe the cost of getting a lawyer, how complicated it is, or just feeling discouraged after a denial. But for the vast majority of people who are approved, this whole long journey, all the paperwork, the waiting, the studying, it all builds up to one final, really powerful and often very emotional moment. And that moment is taking the oath of allegiance. This is not just a formality. This is the legal act that officially transforms an applicant into a citizen. It's a public declaration where you renounce loyalty to any other country and swear to support and defend the United States and its Constitution. So the oath is taken. You are officially a U.S. citizen. But the work isn't quite done yet. There are a few immediate, really practical things every new citizen should do right away. Register to vote, update your record with Social Security, and, of course, apply for a U.S. passport. So we've walked through the whole thing, the forms, the tests, the oath. It's a journey with a very clear set of rules and requirements. But that brings us to a final, really big question. Once that whole process is over, what does it really mean to truly embrace the responsibilities that come with being an American citizen every single day? That's definitely something to think about.